Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first IBPC organized webinar. IBPC Kuwait organized webinar in Kuwait for the first time. And we're very excited and happy to organize this. Of course, for us, many years we've been running live actual programs, but this is the first time that we are doing a webinar. So at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Anand Kapadia, our honorary chairman, to start the event. Thank you and have a good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Ambassador Mr. Sibi George, Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank Ambassador Sibi George and Dr. Reddy to join us this evening. Every year, IBPC organizes several interesting events from September through June, primarily with the aim of developing business relations between India and Kuwait, and provide a platform for businessmen from India to interact with their Kuwaiti counterpart. Prominent Indian businessmen, industrialists, economists, investment bankers, and consultants have been invited to Kuwait on a regular basis. This is our first webinar, as Joji mentioned, after the summer break, or let's say COVID lockdown. We plan to have several seminars in future as well. As we all know, COVID pandemic has brought havoc everywhere, and we have witnessed the hard times and helplessness of each one of us. The economically weaker section of the society were the worst affected. IBPC has been in the forefront of helping the needy by providing monthly ration packages and ready-made meals to thousands of needy and stranded Indians in Kuwait. Our members, together with IBPC, have spent almost $250,000 towards the COVID charity. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening we have a very prolific speaker, Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy, who is known to me for about 5 years. I had visited him in his impressive and state-of-the-art offices in Hyderabad a few times in the past. Upon my request, Dr. Reddy was kind to visit Kuwait a few years ago as IBPC's guest of honor at its anniversary function. I personally wish to thank him for accepting our request to participate tonight. Before I request our Vice Chairman to introduce Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy, I would like to introduce briefly our Honorable Ambassador, Mr. Sibi George, with a request to deliver his opening remarks after my speech. Ambassador Sibi George has been in Kuwait for just over 6 weeks and has since been overtly busy in resolving urgent problems facing the Indian diaspora caused by the unprecedented COVID pandemic, and simultaneously he is also resolving other outstanding and pending issues of the expatriates. Ambassador Sibi George joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1993 and began diplomatic career in Cairo and later served in the diplomatic missions in Doha, Islamabad, Tehran, Riyadh, Washington DC, and Switzerland. He held several important positions at the Ministry of External Affairs in Delhi and organized several summits between India and other countries. He is recipient of the prestigious S.K. Singh Award for Excellence in Indian Foreign Affairs. He hails from Kerala and is a gold medalist in both graduation and post-graduation studies. He also holds a diploma in Arabic language from Cairo University. So this was a very brief introduction of our ambassador, and now I pass on the mic to Choji to proceed with tonight's proceedings. Thank you.
Hello, everyone again. Now I would like the ambassador to request to please present himself, and also to Ambassador sir, please switch on the mic when you start. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. President of Indian Business and Professional Council, Sri Anand Kapadia. Keynote speaker, Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I thank Sri Anand Kapadia and the IBPC team for the initiative in organizing this webinar on the important topic Atmanirbhar Bharat, Challenges and Opportunities During COVID Times. I am happy that we are joined today in this webinar by senior businessmen and distinguished professionals from all over Kuwait, representing several important sectors. I am glad that we have a very renowned industrialist, Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy, to deliver the keynote address today. I had the opportunity to listen to him during a course that I attended at the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad in 2018. Today, all across the world, we face very difficult times. Last several months have indeed been very challenging for almost everyone. Having spent the first 4 months of the pandemic in Switzerland and almost last 2 months in Kuwait, I have personally witnessed how the pandemic has hurt one and all across continents, irrespective of one's nationality or wealth. The COVID-19 crisis, which began as a health challenge, has evolved as an economic disruption, a geopolitical shock, and a social challenge. Today, it has emerged as a global challenge of a magnitude that humanity has not experienced in recent history. It is throwing up new challenges to every country and every society. But this is not a time to lose hope. We should not lose heart or accept defeat. I am happy that, like all over the world, in Kuwait too, we are engaged in an effort to help our many brothers and sisters affected by the pandemic. I thank all those who have contributed in that humanitarian effort of the community, of our associations, our business leaders, and the government of Kuwait and our Kuwaiti friends who helped us in this endeavor. While we fight this battle against the pandemic, both nationally and internationally, and while we continue our efforts to help the needy, we should continue with our economic engagement for the benefit of all. Let me quote Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, who said, "A virus has destroyed the world. Crores of people across the world are facing a crisis. World all over is engaged in a battle to save precious lives. We have never seen or heard of such a crisis. This crisis is unthinkable as well as unprecedented for mankind. However, getting exasperated, losing heart, or getting shattered is not acceptable to the mankind. We have to remain vigilant, closely monitor it, follow the rules of engagement in such a war, save ourselves and move ahead. Today, when the world is in crisis, we must strengthen our resolve. Our great resolve will help overcome this crisis," unquote. It is in this backdrop of this solemn resolve that Honorable Prime Minister came up with this Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, Self-Reliant India initiative that promotes local economy while closely working with our international partners. As an economic powerhouse of the world today, for the benefit of all, India has a responsibility and a vision to explore the opportunities that the crisis has created and to be in a position to benefit from them. Atmanirbhar Bharat is about transforming India from being just a passive market to an active manufacturing hub at the heart of global value chains and positioning India as a nerve center of global supply chains. As part of this endeavor, our embassies across the world are tasked with identifying export and investment opportunities for our businesses in various countries. Our missions are reaching out to and are in touch with business entities that seek to diversify their manufacturing locations. In this regard, I am extremely pleased to learn that we have in our midst today some of the top businessmen from Kuwait who are keen to explore diversification of their manufacturing bases and consider India as their destination for this purpose. I would like to assure you that the embassy would provide all requisite support and assistance in the process. In the short term, there exists an opportunity to enhance our presence in sectors where we have been traditionally strong across the globe. This includes sectors such as textiles, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, gems and jewelry, food materials, etc. Thinking beyond short term, we could move up the value chain in several sectors such as pharmaceuticals, electronics, engineering, IT, designs, outsourcing, etc. It also gives opportunity to work on development of cutting-edge technologies and intellectual property across several sectors. In these efforts, India always considers Kuwait and our friendly countries in the Gulf as natural partners. Kuwait is part of India's extended neighborhood, and the two countries are among each other's major trading partners. Our natural partnership with Kuwait is something that evolved over several generations. It is a partnership involving several stakeholders, business establishments, industry and commercial chambers, investment boards, industry groups, factories, universities, science and technology establishments, and at the root of it all are the vibrant people-to-people contacts. There are several key areas such as energy security, trade and investment, infrastructure development projects, healthcare, automobiles, petrochemicals, and education, where there exists huge potential to broaden our long-standing partnership. We in the embassy are determined to enhance our engagement with our Kuwaiti partners in all these sectors. I am happy to see the overwhelming response for the series of events held here under the banner Atmanirbhar Bharat. I once again thank the leadership of Indian Business and Professional Council for organizing this important webinar. I look forward to the keynote address by Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy. I once again welcome him to this webinar today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador George, for your introduction and for your speech. It's truly challenging times that we're living through. Now, I will say a few words about our keynote speaker, Mr. Reddy. So, Mr. Mohan Reddy is a visionary who firmly placed India on the global engineering, research, and development services map by establishing Cyient, formerly Infotech Enterprises, in 1991. One can confidently say he is the man behind the slogan, Engineered in India. His efforts led Cyient to contribute more than $5 billion in cumulative exports from India to several global clients, including many Fortune 100 companies. His efforts led to the creation of jobs of around 15,000 engineering professionals in 55 locations across 20 countries. Dr. Reddy served as the chairman of NASSCOM, which is the National Association of Software and Service Companies, during 2015 and 16. He served as the chairman of Confederation of Indian Industries, Southern Region, 2008-2009, and currently the chairman of CIS Educational Council. Dr. Reddy is also the founding director of T-Hub, the largest startup incubation center in the country. Dr. Reddy was also a technical advisor to the Prime Minister's office for several years. Dr. Reddy took up several leadership positions to promote higher education in the country. He is currently the chairman of the Board of Governors IIT Hyderabad, which is really remarkable. He is a member of the Leadership Advisory Board at the University of Michigan College of Engineering in the US, and also a member of the Court of Governors of the Administrative Staff College of India. Dr. Reddy received India's fourth highest civilian award, the Padma Shri, in 2017 for his contribution to trade and industry. His leadership has provided design and engineering services to global companies like Boeing, Airbus, Pratt & Whitney, Philips, Siemens, to name a few among many. One prominent acquisition by Cyient is a 3D CAD/CAM technology from Germany, which is also a key to providing mechanical engineering software and services globally. He is the recipient of the Distinguished Leadership Award of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, CIE division. He was also conferred Lifetime Achievement Awards from Hyderabad Management Association, Hyderabad Software Enterprises Association, and the Center for Organization Development, recognizing his industry leadership, corporate excellence, and institution building. He is the recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award from IIT Kanpur and is a fellow of the Institution of Engineers. Dr. Reddy acts as the Honorary Counsel of the Federal Republic of Germany for the states of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Dr. Reddy holds postgraduate degrees from IIT Kanpur and University of Michigan, USA. He is also the recipient of 4 honorary doctorates. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Reddy this evening. Dr. Reddy, please switch on the mic when you start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Choji. Your Excellency, Shri C.B. George, Ambassador of India to Kuwait, Mr. Anand Kapadia, President of IBPC, Mr. Choji, Mr. Deepak Agrawal, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me first thank IBPC for inviting me for this webinar. As Mr. Anand Kapadia said, I was there earlier in 2016, to be more precise, in May of 2016. I was honored and privileged to be at your 13th annual day celebrations. And I immensely enjoyed being there in the physical company of all of you. And hopefully, sometime in the very near future, I will make an attempt to come back again. Thank you, Your Excellency, for the very comprehensive outlook that you have presented to all of us. And I will take the cue from you and continue in the same mode of presenting both realism and also optimism. That's what I intend to do. So therefore, I have a presentation which I'm hoping that I will probably do it in about 30 minutes or so. And thereafter, we'll leave some time for any question and answers. 30 or 35 minutes is what I'm intending to do. So as rightly pointed by Ambassador C.B. George, I think we live in extremely challenging times. So one of the things that many of us have learned all around the world, which also became very popularly known as the Stockdale paradox, is that you can't move away from reality at any point of time. And of course, with optimism. So I'll start, therefore, sharing what I feel as the times we live, to set the context for you. Rightly pointed out, we have extremely challenging times on account of pandemic. People have rightly pointed out this was never experienced by mankind so far. If at all, if there are close resemblances, it was the Spanish flu of 1918. Which actually one should be very careful because this lasted for 2.5 years. But of course, in different century it was early part of 20th century, 1918 to be more precise. But it meant about losing 17 million to 50 million lives. The statistics are were not accurate at that point of time. Impacted about 1/3 of the whole world population. But today, the situation is still continuing to be grim. Look at the map I have with blood red showing the maximum impact to the light pink. And there are very few white spaces anywhere in the geographies. It is blood red in the southern and the western part of India, as we see. It's also blood red in Kuwait, as per the WHO statistics that were published earlier today. But certainly there is a big challenge that we have in terms of lives. We so far in India lost about, in the whole world, lost about more than 900,000 lives. It has impacted about 29 or getting close to 30 million people around the world. In India, there is some positive story. One is that the impact has been far lower, and more importantly, the mortality has also been low. But in addition to having the COVID crisis, because of this life issues, we also have, coupled with it, the livelihood issues. I think both Anant as well as Choji pointed out the work that's been done by IBPC in supporting the livelihoods of people around. This certainly has created enormous amount of impact on the economies around the world. It again is comparable to the Great Depression of the 1930s. The 1930 Great Depression was the longest, it was the deepest, and it's also widespread depression of the 20th century. But you look at what's happening today is also not any different. Just for the last quarter, which is called the Q2 in the American parlance, or Q1 in Indian parlance, the economy contracted by as much as 23.9%. US was about 32%. It's an unprecedented economic situation that we face in the world. This has resulted in also unemployment. And while the numbers are not very clear, but people tell us somewhere about 33% was unemployment way back in the during the Great Depression. Pardon me. But now it looks it's a number which is about 14% is what it went peaked out in US. But as time goes by, it is certainly coming back. Employment is coming back. But look at the other curves that are there on this particular screen. What we see is that it takes a while before the economies recover back. It took for the 2007, it is called the global economic crisis, global financial crisis, GFC. It took us almost as many as 5 to 6 years for the whole employed individuals to get really employed. Thereafter, if you look at, if I talk to some of my economist friends, they all tell me how the recovery could be. They all use these letters called V, they call it as U, they call it as W, and so on and so forth. And these are some of the things that people have experienced in the past. But what we think is happening right now is what I think is also becoming very popular, called the tick mark. So it came down very sharply, as you see from this particular graph. But then it slowly is recovering back, but the recovery will take a long period of time. Depends upon country to country, the whole challenge continues. So we talked about two challenges, the COVID, which is the life challenge. And then as a result of that, there was a economic challenge, which is to do with the livelihoods. But a third phenomenon also came in, which was created in the last 4 years very intensely, is the trade battles that happened. Or I should take it back, it probably happened even before that for a few more years. So you see this major crisis going on between China and US, or the type of challenges people are facing with Brexit. As we speak, there's an acrimony about UK leaving the EU at this point of time. We don't even know how it would progress or how it would end at this point of time. So it is three different phenomena that are happening at this point of time on us. But not everybody realizes at this point of time is that because of the pandemic, Chuchi, can you hear me, or are you having any difficulty? Am I audible?
Can hear you, sir. Can hear you very clearly. Not a problem.
Okay, good. Thank you. And my slides are okay?
Everything is fine.
Perfect. So therefore, we had this three phenomena that was happening: the COVID, the economy, and the third one was the trade wars. But one other thing was very silently happening even before COVID came in, and that was primarily the digital transformation. But the digital transformation has also changed our lives and our livelihoods in the last 6 months. Look at how the outcomes are from consumer perspective. We all do online shopping. What are we doing in meeting each other? We use Zoom, or we are probably using Microsoft Teams. What's happening to schooling is all about homeschooling that happens, or you go through e-learning. How do I do entertainment at this point of time is certainly go to Netflix or Amazon Prime. I don't go to the bank any longer. I get every transaction done on my computer. So also the travel has come down. So the consumer behavior has dramatically changed. So is the business behavior. The normal course of things that healthcare, which was going to a hospital, was to be done physically by us. The doctors are now on consulting. Telemedicine, telesurgery, we'll talk about it. We are seeing more amount of teleconsulting happens. Even for that matter, you look at agriculture at this point of time, people use technologies like robotics to control pests in the farm. And it's true with even education. We can have gadgets and technology underlying it, like the virtual reality, to make sure that we can learn better and faster too. I'm not undermining the teacher. I'll come back to that in a minute. Equally important are technologies like the drone. Again, in the COVID times, in cities like Hyderabad, where I live, we use drones extensively. Actually, we provided these to this Hyderabad security to ensure they did the crowd control. They made sure that they had evidence of social distancing. And look at the third one. How is government behaving at this point of time? In some ways, the drone example was also government. But more importantly, you look at a number of applications that have come by. And what are they is an application called Arogya Setu, which tracks the COVID probability with an individual. It continuously measures temperature. Pardon me for 1 minute, please. It measures temperature. It certainly can show you where the red zones are, and so on and so forth. And also what we see is a number of instances. The government services at this point of time are being done using digital connectivity. For a long time, till the COVID times, of course, or the COVID started off, actually to pay an electricity bill or a water bill used to be a half-a-day job for one of our admin assistants. He would take the bills along with the cash and do it and come back. 4 hours, probably an hour to go, an hour to wait, an hour to come back, approximately half a day's job. What is it today? It's almost momentary. I pay my bills at this point of time, whether it is electricity, it is water, any other bill for that matter. So therefore, our lives have changed because of the COVID. No, it has actually got accelerated with the change because of the COVID times. Digital was there even before. To give you a data point, if you look at e-commerce in the United States, which started off somewhere in the later part of, say, 2008, 2009, or early part of 2010, for the first 5 years, that's up to 2015, about 0.5% of US was using e-commerce. But thereafter, if you look at 2015 to the time COVID struck us, it climbed up to a number called 25%. But in the first 3 months itself, we don't have the statistics now, but for the first 3 months itself, the e-commerce climbed to a number called 50%. So what we could achieve with our efforts as businessmen or individuals or entrepreneurs and so on and so forth, it took us 5 years to move it from 0.25 to 25%. COVID did it in as many as 3 months. But that is the acceleration it has done. So the result is that the whole world has changed. The consumer, the business, and governance has changed to move into digital. And But then the other thing that is also happening is that this digital was not something that COVID created. It was there, it was accelerating. And we were very subconscious of it. Here are some of the technologies which made life so different in the last, say, 5 years to 10 years. These technologies, if you challenge me, were there for a long time. But the fact of life is that every technology has to mature itself, find the right use case for it to certainly flourish. That is what has happened with many of these technologies. Number of people believe that technology changes were very limited to computers. No, it has become far, far beyond computers. It is truly technology. Technology because it is computing, which is becoming faster, it's becoming cheaper, it's becoming smaller. But interestingly, a second phase called connectivity has dramatically improved. Connectivity not any longer just between people, but between people and things. And thereafter, once the connectivity came in, we have enormous amount of data being created because of a new electronic device called the IoT, Internet of Things. It can detect everything and anything that the human beings do. It can feel, you can see the vibrations, you can feel the heat and so on and so forth. It can certainly see, in several instances, pardon me, I will still say it, is that better than even human beings. It can detect actually a lesion in a lung for a patient who is suffering from tuberculosis, even much earlier than the naked eye of a medical doctor. Or it can certainly do the same thing in terms of smell, taste, and of the recent origin of hearing too, sound too. We have a number of sound IoTs. So as a consequence of that, there is oceans of data being created. The IoT, connectivity, computing. And on top of that, because of this enormous amount of computing power you have, you put algorithms, you get meaningful decisions thereafter. But again, it is just not computing. You're seeing enormous amount of change that's happening because of automation too. You're seeing more amount of advanced robotics that are happening. The technology is progressing, which is called additive manufacturing or 3D printing. There is a fairly large amount of change that's happening in fundamental substances, genomics, advanced material. And so also in energy. Certainly today, at least in a city like Hyderabad, for the last 5 years, not 5 years, I'll probably say 6 years, we never had a single instance in summer where we had power shutdowns. That's largely because of a new technology called solar power, which has now become extensive. So people are not depending any longer on the rain gods. They probably are also depending less on the fossil fuel, primarily because of the pollution issues. So therefore, technology has certainly amplified the change that human beings are experiencing at this point of time. So this technology, a few of them that I've called out, is artificial intelligence or additive manufacturing, but there are others too, which are big data, analytics, and robotics, etc. But key thing we also have to remember, it also gave to yet another new technology called cybersecurity, because we live in a world called a connected world. Everything and anything is connected at this point of time. So therefore, if there are instances we know, they've been demonstrated to us, where because the cars are all automated at this point of time, I can break into their network of the car network and start meddling around with the accelerator of the car itself, unless I have enough of a security on the internet connectivity. So therefore, there are new technologies that are coming in. And these technologies, also add, in the past were very limited to one area. Actually, some of us who have lots of years behind us know when technology was called electronic data processing. Thereafter, it was called management information systems. Primarily, what were computers doing is that they were doing bulk processing of data. That's all what they did. But what we do now is far, far different. They actually help you in terms of taking decisions in real time, faster than one can do it yourself. So the result is the technology has become all pervasive. It is not limited to providing management information, whether you talk about healthcare or it's education or it is mobility, connected cars, connected trains, collision control, lane control. All of these have become part and parcel of our lives at this point of time. So the sum total of the story is that in addition to the three things I called out earlier, technology has become another big construct to accelerate a change in mankind. So at this point of time, when those three things were happening, and I did not call out when talking about the trade barriers that we have had, we've also had trade barriers with our own neighbors. So the end result is we had to definitely address all these issues together. And that's when Government of India came out with this mission called the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Pardon me, I'm just doing one time check on myself. Yeah, I should be okay. Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar Bharat, as Ambassador C.B. George mentioned about it, is all about self-reliant India. It does not necessarily mean that we are trying to become isolated. We are saying that we will, the foreign direct investment or FDI is definitely welcome into India. But we also want to make sure that we become more self-reliant than what we were in the past. And especially, I think, given some of the challenges I talked about, we talked about security as a challenge. There are a number of instances people believe that countries can now spy on the others by providing products to start with, which for a naive individual might mean, no, what could this device do to us? But the fact of life is the device could do enormous amount of damage. So to us who live in India, this is a path-breaking initiative. And of course, it will have to definitely get executed. The detail is in execution, and we are all waiting to see how well it will get executed. And in the Atmanirbhar Bharat, if you look at it, it has 5 pillars. And I wouldn't get into all of them, but I'll call out one, which is very dear to us for this discussion today, is that it will be technology driven. India is calling out very clearly that Atmanirbhar, because we do have technologies in this country. We provide technologies to everywhere, to many companies around the world. As my good friend Choji introduced me, I have several of Fortune 100 companies as my customers. My team, my engineers, I feel very proud about them, build design aircraft fuselage for the best of aircrafts in the world. Or we designed aircraft engines for some of them. We provide transport equipment. Those are designed here. So technology, we're no inferior. Just not my company, that industry, which is technology-driven industry, which is actually grown out of IT at this point of time, is as large as about $130 billion. So technology is one construct or a pillar that the government has called for. The second one that I also like to call in this holy Atmanirbhar Bharat is about the supply and demand of people. We have this big advantage of a demographic dividend. We are a nation which has the youngest population in the world. We'll come to that in a moment. But demographic dividend does not last forever. We probably will enjoy that till about 2045 or so. We have under 25 years to go. But we have young population, which requires challenge in terms of education. But therefore, we have to create also jobs thereafter for them. A third one that I like to call out from the Atmanirbhar Bharat is all about capable human resources. Building a resource which is capable. It's not just having a resource in India. It's not educating in India, but making sure that there's skill in India. Actually, I work very intensely in education. My passion is education of the recent past. Shoji talked about my involvement with education, but I also work very closely with the National Education Policy 2020, which has a number of constructs which people like me believe will make this country certainly self-reliant. Certainly, there's a great future ahead for all of us. So I thought, looking at Atmanirbhar Bharat, and Ambassador C.B. George also called out a number of industries. I can't probably go ahead and spend time on all of them, but I just picked up 5 of them as a representation, which can definitely mean a lot to all of us on the call. Look at an opportunity in electronics manufacturing at this point of time. We have 1.25 billion users at this juncture. Even the little child who is born today is, 6 months to 9 months, is using a device to make sure that they entertain themselves, they keep themselves busy. And coupled with that, there is a fairly large amount of urbanization that happens and rapid digitization. This certainly is increasing the penetration of electronic products. That is the opportunity that's there in it. We believe by 2025, there's an opportunity which is as large as $400 billion. The key thing I just briefly said earlier is also our ability to design, but we are not manufacturing. So rightly so, the government focused now as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, unlike Make in India, is the ability to design in India, engineer in India, manufacture in India, and support in India. All that have to happen. So the result is that we will have a product which is made in India. It may not, if you ask me today, be comparable with the globally best product. But if we continue in that particular mode of saying, I need the best and nothing but the best, then you'll never catch up. But I'm not saying certainly, therefore, don't import. But we have to definitely develop internal as in addition to import too. So the government has acted on some of them already. Government now supports electronics manufacturing with something called the production-linked incentive, which gives you about 4 to 6% margin cushion if they give you money for that. There is something called the MSIPS, which is the capital expenditure subsidy, and they're also promoting the manufacturing clusters. Certainly, all of these, if you look at electronics manufacturing too, we actually have we're also into this area called design-led manufacturing. We did design for so long. We now manufacture some of the products for our customers. We built a brand new facility right in Hyderabad. Actually, it's parallel to the runway as you land in Hyderabad. And the SEZ which is there. And that has got the best of technology in terms of even manufacturing. So therefore, India gives you an opportunity to start not manufacturing, but also bring the best of technologies to start manufacturing as efficiently as anyone else. We certainly believe that there is a large amount of startup ecosystem, which is also important. So it is not necessarily product could be yours. The product can be IP'd by somebody else. You can start with them in partnership, or you can buy the IP to start a company in electronics too. Or equally is the case that we have a very robust R&D system. We have as many as about 9,000 of these scientists who work in 1,200 of the R&D institutions. We certainly are putting a lot of effort to make sure the accountability improves. We can definitely make sure that the work they do subsequently gets monetized, industrialized, and productized. Let me move on and talk about an industry which is also very close to many of you, is the construction. The opportunity is absolutely mind-boggling. Today, the real estate sector is booming all right, but still there is a shortfall of about 40 million dwellings in the urban areas, an equal number of them in the rural areas. So therefore, I think there are a number of initiatives the government takes at this point of time to bring about the real estate. And so is the case with infrastructure too. You'd be very surprised, there's only a 24% of the highways in India across the country is only 4-lane highways. The rest of them are 2-lane or a single-lane highway. That's what they are. So therefore, there is an opportunity in building highways and the industrial construction in terms of ports, airports, power, etc. I'm sure you must be reading in the newspaper that number of airports at this point of time are being auctioned for public-private partnership. And in these, again, technology plays a very important role. Certainly, I think, whether it is global positioning systems, GPS as they're called, or we are in a position to get some self-healing concrete as a technology. We have to use the best of technologies to get the best value for our end customer. There are initiatives the government has put in place. I talked about the dwellings, but there is also a smart city mission where they have now called out 500 of these cities, which will both have which are more than 100,000 people. Plus, I think a few of those temple cities have been added. But we do have challenges. The cost of construction is high. The only way that we can address that is making sure that people become more productive using technology. We also have challenge in terms of the land prices. The land supply has to be unlocked. And that is one way of doing that is FSI increase, or probably make sure that we can use some of the public land, but have the right infrastructure to connect them. And we also need to get the right levels of labor reforms. Flexibility, but also bring in safety net for the people, and most importantly, get them better skilled. So is the case with healthcare. This is one other industry which has got a technology relevance, because this is an industry which also has enormous amount of challenge because of a number of doctors to patient ratio is one of the highest in the world in India. So that we can't manufacture doctors overnight or produce doctors overnight. But what we can do for sure is make sure that we use technology to supplement the doctor. And technology is doing wonders. Actually, at this point of time, a number of friends I have in the doctor community tell me they're all at their what they would see as patients in the past. 60% of those patients are on teleconsulting at this point of time. And the doctors seem to enjoy it, and the patient enjoys. Patient saves time. There's no more of waiting time. He also can log in on a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams or a WebEx, name them. All of them are using extensively these technologies. He can see the patient, except that and some of the technologies today can make you feel the patient too. So this is yet another opportunity, because you're seeing growing hospitals, growing use of medical devices. There's a lot of clinical outsourcing that's happening with this in this country, and there is more amount of medical equipment that's coming in. The government, of course, did well in terms of putting together Ayushman Bharat, the world's largest government-funded health scheme. And we think that is working reasonably well right now. But equally important is that we need to have more amount of public-private partnership, and government is allocating more amount of funds for healthcare. That gives another opportunity. But what I think we feel at the end of it, given that we are all talking about this in COVID times, is that Hyderabad is likely to be, or India, if not even Hyderabad, I'll say India will be the vaccine capital of the world. I think Bill Gates said that also today. India may not have the vaccine IP to the extent that we like it to be, but will be the largest producer of the vaccine. I have two more areas to cover very quickly before I conclude. Is education, again an industry which has been impacted, a sector which has been impacted because of COVID. Children are going to school. We found a number of ways in which it can be done, technology playing an extremely important role. And the NEP 2020, which I called out earlier, National Education Policy, which is a very comprehensive framework for education system. It changes the schooling system from the old 12 classes to now going up to 14 classes. And then, you have exits, entries, extremely high levels of flexibility, gives you an opportunity to become innovative, to also learn vocational training. Vocational training becomes very important. So a number of initiatives that are put together in education. And we have found innovative ways in which technology can be used. And I, in the lighter vein, keep telling people, I went to library in the past. But now, library is with me. I actually am sitting in my home office, which is a library by itself. I can't throw away the books. I still keep them because I've collected them over the last 50 to 60 years. So therefore, but I don't need the library, very honestly. Because some of those books that are like the dictionaries or the Britannicas and so on and so forth, they're all on the upper level shelves. The reason being, I don't need them anymore because I have them online at this point of time. So therefore, what is happening is you can learn better at this point of time because of technology. And this technology gives you tremendous amount. Education gives you yet another big opportunity because you have the largest number of people who are being educated right now, 500 million of them in this country. And it's the second largest e-learning market. Finally, defense is another area which has an enormous amount of opportunities, which is, I think we continue to be the fifth largest defense budget in the world. We do about 70% of our defense is imported. But I think recently the government certainly did very well. They put restrictions on 101 weapons and military platforms. They've also earmarked about 52,000 crores for indigenous capex procurement. So therefore, I think government is targeting more in terms of local procurement. Therefore, it is not just self-sufficiency, but making sure that we produce for the world too. It is make for India and make for the world too is what it is. So I called out 5 different industries: electronics, construction, healthcare, education, aerospace. And I can assure you it works for everything the same way too. So what is in conclusion that I'm trying to draw at this point of time? We should not get disappointed about what happened to our lives. I think if you look back in the 1930s, the Great Depression, it was industries which brought the whole world out of the depression. It was the industries like automobile, the T-assembly line of Ford Motor Company came in existence around this time. It was the electronic production, the radio came into existence, or it was electricity which made the difference to us. Oil production went up. So the world certainly recouped itself. It took a while, but we will come out. So also this time, we will come out. But this time, the key driver for us, the recovery for us will be led by new digital technologies. So therefore, all of us require to commit ourselves to technology, to making sure that the technology will be the growth driver for all of us. Please do not get very concerned that will technology take away jobs? No, I keep saying technology will produce more jobs. I have a picture of New York Fifth Avenue in 1908. And from the Fifth Avenue, from a vantage point, the picture was taken. And you found that all the street was full of horse-drawn buggies, except for one little tiny car in one corner. 10 years later, in 1918, before the Spanish flu, they took a picture of the same street again. It was full of cars. Just a few of those buggies were there. It doesn't mean in those 10 years we killed all the horsemen or the horses for that matter. And but what happened is people got reskilled. As technology comes in, what we will do is all of us will get ourselves skilled. So what did I do at this point of time? Certainly did not want to paint all that gloomy picture. I started off with what I keep calling it as the realism. The realism in us at this point of time says, which actually I should acknowledge, it's also very famously known in the management parlance called the Stockdale paradox. Mr. Jim Stockdale was actually a vice president candidate for the United States at one point of time. He was a Vietnam veteran. His success story it was. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam at one point of time. So what Stockdale phenomena teaches is that you have to definitely understand what realism is. If reality is not being felt by you and you say that, look, everything is okay with the world and it will continue to be okay, no. We have to understand what realism is. And that's the reason why I painted those 3 major factors and how the digital is moving forward and how it will further change us. Reality being what it is, but future is wonderful. We'll all come out very strong in future if we continue to have steadfast optimism to say that we'll emerge from this crisis stronger. With that, thank you very much for hosting me this evening. I'll only conclude by saying I salute all the frontline COVID warriors who actually put their lives ahead of us to make us very safe. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reddy. for that wonderful explanation on the corona, or during the exploration that people have to go through with technology during these corona times. So I will now open the forum. You be there online. I will open the forum for questions and answers for people to send in their questions. So I'll just make an announcement for that. Please go ahead. Dr. Reddy, we do have a couple of questions which I'm going to publish for you. So here's one of them right now. So, Dr. Reddy, can you see it on your screen? If you go to the right side, there is that Q&A button. If you click on
Q&A
that.
button, yes, I can see them now, yes. The first one is, I can see one from Mr. Baljit. No, I think you need to go back further. No. In your opinion, is the COVID virus man-made in lab or a natural calamity? Sir, thank you for asking that question, but I'm not the expert on that. So I would not be in a position to answer you. We don't know. There's only speculation, and I don't want to talk about something that I don't know. So we'll leave it for right now, Mr. Khanna. We'll then go down to should consider globalization is a phenomenon of the past? Not necessarily, I think. What we will see, this again from Mr. Ramesh Khanna, the question is, should we consider globalization be a phenomenon of the past? The answer is no. It is not going to be the past. We'll continue with the globalization, except it will morph itself into a different format. We think there will be more amount of hyper localization that will happen. It will not be as easy as moving people and goods as what in the past. It's a globalization of different format. But certainly countries will not live in isolation. So it will not be a reversal as what happened to globalization, but it will morph itself into a different form. I saw one other question somewhere. Can you help me, Choji?
Sure. There was one question from Dr. Upadhyay, and he's a columnist from Hyderabad, and he's asking, don't you think too much dependence on technology will result into erosion of motivation and enterprise?
Not necessarily, sir. We think the other way around. It's motivating the individuals far better because, they're also be in a position to achieve more in the same amount of time that was provided to them. Technology is helping them to be becoming a lot more productive than what they were in the past. They are in a position to achieve greater objectives. They are in a position to have better satisfaction because they are in a position to, for instance, you look at product development, they used to do pieces of product development, but now in the same amount of time, they could do a product themselves. There is a challenge, all right. The challenge is in terms of making sure that you have multidisciplinary skills. No longer, in the past, all of us lived in an era where one skill was good enough. I am a trained mechanical engineer. I feel very proud about being a mechanical engineer. I can still talk about the conventional automobile quite extensively, about a gearbox and a differential and rack and pinion and so on and so forth. But they're all of the past. So therefore, the degree that I earned will not allow me to last forever. What will happen in the future is that we need to have micro degrees. That's what we are planning right now. Actually, the new education policy or the national education policy talks about having a certificate in 1 year, a diploma in 2 years, a degree in 3 years, an honors degree in the next 4th year. So I think there are a number of initiatives that are coming in. So I don't think people will get demotivated. They'll get more motivated in the technology.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. There's One question from Mr. Vijit Singh. He says, thanks, Dr. Reddy, for your eye-opening talk. Bharat has always been progressing and making a mark the world over. What has happened differently with Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative by the government? Despite the dampening effect of the COVID, what are the signs of potential improvements as a result of this initiative? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Singh. A couple of thoughts are, see, after we started this mission of Atmanirbhar Bharat, even in the COVID times itself, you look at it, a fairly large amount of indigenous products have come. I believe before the COVID times, we did not have even mass production of any great volume or the personal protection equipment, PPEs as they're called. They were not at all produced in India. Today, I think we are surplus in each one of them. At one point of time, even sanitizers were in short supply. Not true anymore. So therefore, there are a number of initiatives that are happening at this point of time. Actually, the other one is there are 38 different ventilators which have been designed and manufactured in India, different grades of them. We've also seen, if you look at the test equipment that's required, some of them have been purposed thereafter because they were originally equipment which are using for testing tuberculosis, can now be used even for COVID testing. And we actually manufacture some of this equipment in our own facilities for one of our customers in India.
Wow.
So the result is that we are seeing, even in COVID times, there is good amount of momentum. So since Atmanirbhar Bharat mission has been announced, it's only end of May. The finance minister used this word for the first time. In early June, the prime minister used. I think there is a fairly large amount of momentum. We are, I think, continue to dialogue with the government, the leadership, and I think there are a fairly large number of positive things that are happening. So I still feel very positive that the Atmanirbhar Bharat mission will do a lot of good to us. You're on mute, Choji.
Sorry, sir. Yeah, I just realized. So we have one more question from Mr. Deepak Bindal. Is there any single platform like a government website where sector-wise investment opportunities are provided, whether in a public or a private project or a company?
I think I'm not too sure. I will, but one place you should visit is Invest India. That's a Government of India created entity which works with DIIP as it's called, and that's it was called DIP at one point of time. At the Government of India Department of Commerce entity, they have a lot of published information. So that could be one place that you could get information on potential investments.
If I may speak, this is Fahad from Embassy. Just to add on to what Dr. Reddy just said,
please.
There is a portal called India Investment Grid, wherein you do find details about a lot of investable projects sector-wise. So, and the link to this portal is also available on our embassy's website. I would encourage whoever is interested may consider looking at that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Fahad. Dr. Reddy, we have a couple of more questions, if you don't mind. Here's one, Mr. Ram Mohan. Question is, sir, we are not behind schedule in Atmanirbhar Bharat as we woke up late, and can we catch up with the developed world in self-sufficiency?
In some instances, what we found is it's a blessing in disguise, because what happens is that, if you probably were doing development, say 20 years back, you had to go through phase-wise, step by step. For example, today, not many countries in the world can have the ability to go ahead and deploy 5G as quickly as India will do, because I think we have not made so much of investments on the 4G part of it. You might say it's bad, we did not do those investments, but we are leapfrogging ourselves. So there's no denying that we missed on some technologies, but I think now it's never too late for anything in my life. That's what I keep saying. And therefore, I don't think there are challenges in terms of starting late. At least they're starting right now. And the timing could not be any better than this, because technology is on your side. Technology is at its best. The acceleration and the amplification is the best. You also, and I have to caveat it, I do not belong to the government. I'm not a BJP spokesperson or a card holder, but I'm saying I think you have a leadership which has the right intent. So as a result of that, with a combination of leadership, technology, and a country which has become matured by itself, the ability of having the 500 people going to schools at this point of time, demographic dividend, all these are very positives. So it's never too late in life.
Okay.
Somebody asked me a question earlier, Choji, that was interesting. Do you find generation gap in technology? Is one of the questions that somebody else asked. It disappeared thereafter. I can't see it.
Correct.
And the answer is my competitor is my granddaughter in technology. And I always, and believe me, she's 12-years old. And both of us compete with each other. So it's not, I think the generation is not a reflection of age. Generation to me is a reflection of your mindset. There are youngsters who defy saying that, look, we don't want to learn new things. But to me, therefore, generation gaps in terms of age is not a criteria at all. And this will become more interesting as we move forward. I think I briefly mentioned about it, that technology will make sure you are obsoleted in no time. So therefore, all of us have to learn all the time. Learning is not with a destination. Learning it's a journey by itself. I get 1 degree is not good enough for us. I have to get multiple degrees every 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I don't know. Even 6 months, it will happen at some point of time to the world. So therefore, generation gaps do not come into my mind at all.
I agree with you on that, sir. Although generation gaps are a mindset, but still, I think it's also a stimulation for us to catch on to it. So yeah, that's my thought on it. Okay, we have one Sunita Matthew asking, what is your view on how digitization is causing the erosion of personal privacy? What organizations should be discussing and coming up with solutions for this?
The last sentence I could catch in. You said, how is digitalization creating problems with personal privacy?
Yeah, and what organizations should be discussing and coming up with solutions for this?
Sure. So, good question. Thank you for asking that. Certainly, I think it's of a concern to all of us, because our lives are become very public at this point of time. So there are data privacy issues that are there and data security issues that are there at this point of time. So therefore, these are extremely important. And I think the Indian government is also coming up with a new data privacy policy, which we thought it was a little harsh. That's the reason why I think it is being debated a little more further. Because, in a world that we live in, we can't say we'll completely isolate the data by itself. Then the purpose of data is all completely lost. But all the same, we can't put our private lives to public. But today, technology is so, at times, it makes you a little nervous, all right. I have a company where I'm invested in United States. It's a startup at this point of time, and it's doing extremely well. So if you're doing e-commerce, basically trying to get to a website to go and buy something, by the time you click for the 5th time, the computer gauges based on your facial expressions and your movement of cursor that you did in those before you did the 5th click, whether you're a serious buyer or you're window shopping. So the end result is it entices you, if you're a serious buyer, to offer you discounts and so on and so forth. You get glued onto it, seriously. Otherwise, it says, look, we're wasting time with this guy. Let's move on. So therefore, the privacy issues are important. They're again a privacy, my personal feelings being captured by somebody. But those are some of the issues that we have with technology. But within organizations, you come to enterprises, we are very conscious that data is private. It cannot be into public domain. It has to be anonymized if it has to be used for any purpose. and that too with the appropriate levels of controls and permissions that have to be given. So I think it's a concerning issue, but it's not something that we should think about to say stop digitization.
Okay. Fair enough, Dr. Reddy. We have one, Mr. Suresh. He says, thank you, Dr. Reddy, to reveal the current reality. I'm thinking we are moving towards contactless world. Can you brief what all measures to be taken by business world for us to face?
Okay, so I think we did this in a big time when lockdown came in the harsh way. We're into unlock at this point of time. Very harsh things were happening to us. Nobody could come to work. So we get this phenomena called work from home as a new phenomena. Lots of things were done. With a missionary zeal, some of the leadership teams have worked in a number of companies. The fact today in the IT industry in India, there are 4 million people who are directly employed. And 90% of the 4 million people are working from home. So the transformation was quick. There's lots of challenges. But in business world, the first thing that I tell you is cash is king. So please preserve cash. That's number one. The number two that I have is we don't know what the future is like. Realism is I don't know. I know I'll come out very strong. I'm very optimistic. I don't know when will I come out strong. It might take 3 months. It might take 6 months. At one point of time, they said, vaccine will be available on August 15th. There were lots of rumors that went around. Or in India. Or for that matter, they were saying in US, before the election, 1st November, they'll be rolling it out. So we don't know. So therefore, in this uncertain world at this point of time, please limit your expenses. Because the customer also is the same mode as you are. So you're doing business with them. He or she has challenges, or the enterprise has challenges. The second one, therefore, is that we are saying that please make sure your expenses are limited. First is cash is king. Second is expenses are to be limited. Third one is please be extremely humanitarian. Today, everybody is in pain without any denying whatsoever. So the result is don't take harsh decisions, but it has to be very calculated decisions people have to take. So therefore, I can go on. There is a standard operating procedures that people have drawn up. We give it to our startup companies too. But these are some of the 3 guiding principles on which we work.
Right. Right, sir. One question concerning about the poverty in India is that how does the digitalization efforts of the government reach to the people to the lower end of the strata? So yeah, that's a common question and it's coming up. So maybe.
I think the key thing is all about Atmanirbhar Bharat is trying to make sure India becomes self-reliant. So which means that, we will also create a fairly large number of jobs. If you look at my slide earlier that I talked about and the 3 things that I called out, certainly there is a lot of emphasis on the people that we have in this country. The big human population that we have in this country is the biggest asset that we have. From a social perspective, it's a big asset. Economists can say so many mouths to feed. But certainly, I think there is a fairly strong commitment to make sure that the employment generation has to happen. So therefore, that is how, if you look at the NEP, that's the National Education Policy 2, vocational education has been combined with basic education. So even they're saying like bag-free days to school, they're saying school-free days to go on vocational work. They are now talking about 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds going to a shop for a 2 weeks training to learn about what happens in the shop. I mean, I have to understand what the trading that goes on there. So I think the emphasis for sure is to create employment. And I think, it has to be coupled with skilling people too. I think I called out in construction that construction costs are very high in this country, largely also because of productivity. So therefore, if we can skill our people well, productivity will go up, we'll become a lot more competitive. So I think there is definitely a focus on people and jobs.
Thank you, sir. There is a question on, is strategic workforce planning effective and used by many organizations in India?
Say it again, Choji, strategic?
Strategic workforce planning, is it effective and is it used by many organizations in India?
Well, we do workforce planning. I am not very sure what the whole thing was meant by strategic workforce planning. We are at this point of time trying to look at different business models in terms of workforce planning at this point of time. Because today you have also taken away the myth called work from home. It's a myth not only that is taken away from us, also from our customer minds. Customers also were not allowing us at some point of time to allow people to work from home. They had concerns about trade secrets and IP protection, cyber security, etc. And also, I think the government also did not give us enough of flexibility to work from home. Even today, as we speak, we do have a concession being given by government, but otherwise you have to pay a fairly large sum of money for getting this dynamic IP, as it's called. Because when you work from office, you're the static IP, whereas in a work from home mode, you're into a dynamic IP mode. Right. So therefore, I think we are in a position to now plan people differently. The workspaces will be different. We think that there will be at least about 30% of workspaces will get released. People will become, because you don't need all 100% of the people coming to work 100% of the time. They probably can come once a week or the max twice a week. We're also looking at models where we think that even that once per week or twice a week, as opposed to coming to a central location, we all had this pride. We continue to have a pride, all right, of having large campuses. We house in campuses, each one of them about 3,000, 4,000 people, 10 acres pieces of land that we've had. So we continue to have them with us, all right. But is that the right model is what we are trying to question ourselves, saying that can we localize a facility to a particular geographic territory of even the city of Hyderabad? So they come to work on that particular facility once a week, and then they can report back into the offices otherwise from their home itself. So there is a fairly large amount of strategic thinking in terms of people. That's the question towards it. And how to, and the other thing that's also happening is the skills of the future are far different from skills of the past. So therefore, there is a fairly large amount of emphasis of reskilling people, upskilling people within the organizations. The business models are changing with the customers. So we have to definitely keep that in mind in terms of planning our workforce. So these are some of the things that are coming into play. If I've answered the question, that's good, but otherwise you can even send me an email and I can answer that to you.
Thank you, sir. We take maybe one or two more questions. One is, the online education obviously, has replaced or has come into play because of the COVID situation. But we all know that, the human touch of the kids growing up is very important. So what do you think, will happen to the sort of the development of the child, when online education is, say, it's happening because it's needed because of Corona, but at the same time, the human touch element, the teacher-children interaction element is missing. So how does one sort of, what does one do with that? My God.
It's a good question, Choji. I think there's a fairly large amount of research that is happening at this point of time on how this human interaction will continue to be there. And I still continue to learn. So therefore, I also sit through some of these sessions. As was mentioned earlier, I sit on the board of University of Michigan Engineering at this point of time. So we are doing a lot of work in how people learn. So therefore, in higher education, I think it's much easier. when it comes to school education, it becomes much more challenging. But there are social groups that can be created. Socially, they can interact. It certainly is very tough, especially in India. And in the recent past, for example, the government is opening the schools from next Monday. That's on the 21st, I believe. From class, it is a graded opening that we're doing from class 9 to class 12. And I was on one of the shows in the last week, and I was saying that is one of the things that we had to do. We had no other choice, because the simple reason that in a country like India, not all children have a large homes for themselves. They don't have room for themselves. They all live with their parents in a 10 by 12. Now, being there 24/7, 360 plus days in a year in that particular room is not going to do good to the child. And therefore, I think whoever has raised that question, it's very important, especially for the school-going children. So we are certainly not advocating that they'll all become online. But certainly, I think there's a play for them also for online. As opposed to, I have my grandchildren, and I have several other friends who have grandchildren too. I interact with these young kids, and they all make fun of their teachers and how bad the teacher is, and so on and so forth. I'm sure we did this too. Not this is anything which is unusual. But then the point is, so that if the child felt bad about learning a particular concept for a teacher, how bad the teacher was, you now have an option to learn online. The best of teachers in the world are available online teaching the same concept to you. So look at the luxury that the child has. No denying that you have to have a pad, you have to have a connectivity, some of the things we are addressing at this point of time. We actually now are doing a lot of TV teaching in India. TV channels are being dedicated for school children. Like the hourly class, the classes are going on the TV channels right now. We're using WhatsApp groups to send question and answers to them. So there's a lot of experimentation that will have. Necessity becomes the mother of invention. So therefore, I think lots of changes that are happening. I'm not definitely in that mindset to say the child will become learn everything online. Teacher is very important. Guru is very, very critical for our development. But it does not mean that without that, you can also have better quality gurus coming online as opposed to just seeing them in physical presence.
So true. Thank you. By the way, for the record, that question was from Mr. Satish Sharma.
Okay.
So that he knows. Okay. All right. There is one question. Maybe it says, should we also not prioritize, guided by GOI and the government of India, the growth of various industries based on need of common people?
I think it is happening at this point of time. I think, governments cannot, we've also seen one other thing happening around the world. When governments have intervened, the businesses have not done too well. Because government is there for governance, not for doing business. They don't know what is required. You look at an entrepreneur, one of the key elements that an entrepreneur brings to table is what I keep calling it as empathy. He can jump into the shoes of his customer and think about what pain points are, find a solution for the pain that the customer is feeling at this point of time. So the government, they probably are very good in governance at this point of time. So I think market will definitely do that. But wherever there are interventions that are required, for instance, agriculture, they wanted to have a good pricing for the agriculturist. They felt that the intervention, the middlemen were making a lot of money. So that part of it, I think through a new regulation, they have removed that at this juncture. So there are a number of interventions of this nature that will come in. That is, the government will come at a policy level intervention, but they will not determine what is to be done. If they determine what is to be done by the industry, we're going into the public sector regime. And all of us know how inefficient the public sector regime, not all public sectors, but some of them became, and they became millstone around the neck of the tax-paying public. So the result is, I think we should allow government to do what they're good at doing, and we should do what we are good at doing.
Thank you. And we'll take, I think, one more last question from a young chap. And, of course, very tactical question. So China is facing an unprecedented global backlash that could destabilize its reign in the world's factory of choice. So do you think India can actually take over from China? And can India be the new world's factory of choice? I think that's a question to all of them.
Lot of thinking going on, lots of brains being put behind it at this point in time. Please don't underestimate China either. See, one thing we all have to recognize, and rightly pointed out by somebody in the recent past. See, if you look at the multinationals that have gone into China to put up shops there and manufacture them, they do 1/3 of their production is absorbed by the Chinese public. It is Chinese domestic. 1/3 of it, I believe, goes to US or Europe. And the other 1/3 comes to the rest of the world. So therefore, if they start misbehaving in any way, the first thing that will happen to them is putting that first 1/3 at risk. That's the domestic presence that they had in China itself. So the result is that it is, and you certainly have to also think about, don't come to a conclusion, jump to conclusions. You also need to look at country competitiveness. Some countries have, for whatever reasons, had their own competitiveness. For example, Bangladesh is extremely good in doing textiles. So, or Sri Lanka, or the recent past, has picked up textiles at this juncture. So therefore, we have to don't look at in a global presence, all industries and so on and so forth. So what I think the businessmen in India and the government help, we're all looking at is specific sectors where we would have advantage. If there are gaps, how to fill those gaps to make sure we become a lot more productive and as a result, competitive. Actually, there is a report in the recent past by, I think it was Nippon Securities, which said the first round of China Plus One strategy, India was not all that successful. I wouldn't go into the details. But therefore, I think we can't come to a conclusion that if China is not there, India is the alternative. We got to do a lot of work, and that is what Atmanirbhar Bharat also does. Make sure we do skilling, we do ease of doing business, several things that we play into to make sure we become competitive.
Correct. Absolutely correct, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I'm going to now end this Q&A session at this point. And
thank you.
We have one of our office bearers, Mr. Deepak Agarwal. He would like to express his vote of thanks. So Deepak, let me make you live. Hold on.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Reddy. It was a fantastic presentation, and we learned a lot of new things like Stockdale paradox and different vowels, V, W, L, U. It was really fantastic. And I thought I'll summarize a lot of things, but I don't think I can do a justice of it, whatever you have done. And I'm sure it is too late for you at night. Now, I also would like to thank the chief guest, His Excellency Ambassador George. And I see Fahad is there, who has been very instrumental in helping us in organizing these webinars. And we definitely look for more cooperation from the Indian Embassy. So at this stage of vote of thanks, generally what happens is people are rushing towards dinner, but we can't have the luxury right now of that and networking. So I'll just take this moment to thank our lot of well-wishers. So bear with me for maximum a minute. So I thank the IBPC members, the executive committee, the embassy staff. Fahad is one of the instrumental in that among them. The IIT-IIM Association of Kuwait, the Indian Doctors Forum, the CA chapter, the Tamil Nadu Engineers Association, Bharatiya Bhasha Parishad, the Bengali Association, AIMS, Maharashtra Mandal, all the principals of the Indian schools in Kuwait, Indian Women's Association, the office bearers of definitely of IWA, the Institution of Engineers, Kuwait, and lastly, the media, the Arab Times, the Kuwait Times, the Al Rai, the Skywaves, Al Jazeera, Asia Net, Avanti TV, Mangalam TV, and definitely our core media, IndiansInKuwait.com and Frontliners. And that's it. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal, and thank you very much to all the members of IBPC. I really enjoyed the evening. Thank you very much, Joji. Thank you, Anant. We'll keep in touch. Thank you, Farhad. Good meeting you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. God bless. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank all the members and attendees. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand.
Thank you. Bye bye.